But first tonight, Tony Quinn is a name synonymous in Ireland with health and fitness and with the famous victory of boxer Steve Collins over Chris Eubank. Tony Quinn health shops and gyms are scattered throughout the country, and more people are using his products and his teachings in an effort to improve their lives. Tonight, 2020, in conjunction with the Sunday Tribune newspaper, investigates claims that there may be more to the Tony Quinn organisation than meets the eye. We hear personal testimonies from families who have been involved with the Quinn organisation, and we also examine details of his company's many activities. But we begin by taking a look back at the beginnings of the Tony Quinn phenomenon.
And it's ready to grant all of your wishes and give you your perfect life.
Tony Quinn was born in Arbour Hill in Dublin. As a young man, he trained as a butcher but left the profession in pursuit of higher ideals. He soon made a name for himself as a bodybuilder, winning many national titles in the 70s. After spending time abroad, Tony returned to Ireland and set up yoga classes, which became an instant success. He soon branched into gymnasiums, and his health shops appeared around the country, all selling Tony Quinn brand products. Many would associate the name Tony Quinn with boxer Steve Collins. It was around the time of Collins' world title win over Chris Eubank that Quinn came to public light. However, it is the Tony Quinn seminars that have elevated this man to prominence and wealth. The Tony Quinn Educo seminars are, according to the brochure, possibly in minutes the most effective way ever devised of using your mind, with 4 quantum leaps that will take you into a whole new dimension in living. Quinn's philosophy is based on the potential power of the unconscious mind, what he refers to as unconscious attention.
A person may pay inattention, that is, they're not interested in what you're saying, basically. Someone may pay forced attention, where they try and concentrate. And then we have unconscious attention, where the person is paying you so much attention they're not aware that they're paying attention to you. And this is exactly what this is. And then you start to deepen that.
The Quinn seminars are held in exotic locations around the world, including Egypt and Paradise Island in the Bahamas, where Tony Quinn also has a home. To participate in the 2-week seminar, clients pay anything from £15,000 upwards. With an average of around 60 people attending each course, they're paying up to around £1 million.
And make it a beautiful island, that you're really happy with it. Make it perfect for you.
Many people around the country have publicly complimented the workings of the Tony Quinn seminars, saying they've changed their lives. However, 2020 has been approached by a number of individuals who have expressed their concerns about some of the workings of the Quinn organisation. This man's wife has been involved in Tony Quinn's organisation for 10 years. Initially, he didn't have a problem with the activities his wife was partaking in, the gym, healthy eating and exercise programs. But as the years progressed, so too did his concerns.
Initially, my wife's involvement meant that she went to a class a couple of times a week, but over the years it grew to every morning she'd get up and take maybe 6 or 7 different supplements, all with bearing the Tony Quinn label. She would listen to Tony Quinn tapes during the day. She'd wear Tony Quinn t-shirts, she'd have Tony Quinn shampoo. It just seemed to be a total dependency had overtaken my wife, and everything in her life revolved around Tony Quinn.
His wife got particularly drawn to Tony Quinn's prayer requests.
She would send in requests to Tony every month, requesting various good things happen in her life. So anything that my wife achieved, the credit was given to Tony. But if she put in a request and it didn't happen, it was down to her negative thinking and her non-compliance with Tony's way of thinking. So, like, she was totally disempowered by the whole process. This led to difficulties with myself, but it was more than that. Her whole family seen the difficulty with her way of thinking.
Eventually, and without discussing it with her husband, she left her job to go to work for the Tony Quinn organisation, taking a 50% drop in salary and alienating her husband and her family even further. It wasn't long before she had also paid £15,000 for a seminar in the Bahamas. While to most people this would seem a lot of money, to many it's a small price to pay for the knowledge Tony Quinn can provide. Martin Ford works for the Quinn organisation and explains the cost.
The reason why they're pitched to that level, there are a number of reasons, right? First of all, it makes the person think about what they're taking on. It's not a holiday, it's a training seminar. And we would want people who are determined to put it into practice when they would come back. Secondly, Tony, his personal capacity ranks him at that level in earning terms. Now, I hasten to say that the seminar is all in the sense that your flight and your accommodation, as well as the tuition, are all included. But nonetheless, we would say that Tony is one of the highest paid people in the world in this area. And he would rank with people who run seminars of a similar nature, or at a similar level of cost, if you like, such as Anthony Robbins or Jack Black or whoever it's going to be.
You mentioned that it's all in. We spoke to a Dublin travel agent, and just to get a rough cost, a holiday, top-class hotel, flights, full board for 2 weeks in Egypt, and we were given a cost of in and around £2,000.
Yeah.
So the £13,000 essentially, is that paying for Tony's services?
I'm not saying any particular figure because there's a little more to it than what you've just outlined. But I do say that when you go, you're paying Tony a fee which is commensurate with his status, really, in terms of mind training and mind technology.
A little more to it. Would that be when, I suppose, the agents who encourage people to go on the seminars, we've been told, get £2,000 for every person they encourage to go on the seminar. So a little bit more that you mentioned, would that be the money that's essentially going for pyramid selling?
Pyramid selling doesn't enter into this, whatever. There is no pyramid selling, whatever.
Well, we've spoken to people who said that if an agent encourages, or if a person encourages somebody to go on a seminar, they get £2,000 for every person.
Let me put it this way to you, right? If you look at seminars on an international scale, okay, you could have maybe Anthony Robbins or whatever. If you bring a number of people from your business along or from your family, you will get that at a reduced rate. Now, very many of the people who come along send people from their families and from their businesses, and we think it's only fair that they get some kind of rebate, and that's essentially what that's about.
So you do get money if you encourage people to go on the seminar?
You're quite correct in that.
The Quinn organisation encourages prospective clients to use OPM or other people's money to finance the courses. This is a catchphrase which seems to allow people considering the course to dissociate themselves from the true amount involved. I spoke to somebody from the Tony Quinn organisation inquiring about the seminar and was advised the whole idea of OPM to maybe borrow the 15,000, 5,000 from the credit union, 10,000 from the bank. Now, one thing I was told, which I found quite worrying, I was advised maybe not to tell them the real reason that I was looking for the money, possibly to tell them that I was looking to buy a car or go on a holiday. Why are people from Tony Quinn's organisation telling people this?
The person you spoke to may or may not be from the organisation. I don't know anything about that. But what I can say to you is that we don't necessarily encourage people to do anything of the sort. We, in fact, often refer people who need to know about loans to lenders who are experienced in this area, who know the seminars for and are prepared to countenance lending for it. So, I mean, that's our approach.
However, the price tag for developing unconscious attention does not stop at £15,000. This woman's husband paid many times that sum to the Quinn organisation.
Well, I noticed a remarkable change in his personality when he returned. He was very much unrecognisable from the man that I married. He was emotionally withdrawn from both myself and my children. And he was reading a lot of Bible. Yo-yo dieting, one day fat diets, one day starvation diets, one day fruit diets, and I was very worried about these because I thought they were potentially very dangerous, particularly the fat diet. There was no television, no radio, no newspapers. There was actually absolutely no contact whatsoever with any of the media. And but I think the hardest thing was the emotional withdrawal and the fact that he just didn't seem to care about the family anymore. After my husband went on the course, a number of my family also became involved and paid huge sums of money to Tony Quinn. There's my main concern is for my remaining children. I'm just worried that my remaining children will become involved as well.
Apart from the apparent pressure put on families by these sort of courses, the cost alone seems to have very few professional comparisons. 2020 asked Dr. Sean Collins, president of the Irish Institute for Counselling and Hypnotherapy, if he knew of any comparative costs for such courses.
I have been involved in training NLP, hypnotherapy, counselling, psychotherapy for over 12 years now. Typical training courses, and I've trained in the States, I've trained in England, would be somewhere between £60 and £100 a day would be the norm that you would pay for any standardised training with a world-class trainer. So I'm not sure that I would consider $15,000 for 2 weeks to be good value.
Professor Patricia Casey, Professor of Psychiatry in the Mater Hospital, was also asked of any comparative costs within psychiatric circles.
They would expect to pay between £60 and £120 an hour, roughly that. Of course, for over 50% of the population, they would be entitled to free treatment because once you have a medical card, all of these therapies are available on the public service.
While some people are not satisfied with the seminars, many more seemingly are. However, some experts have expressed concerns over the content of these types of courses. Quinn admits to using a mixture of psychology, spirituality, yoga and hypnotherapy, an area in which he holds qualifications.
Let's define what hypnosis is, because that is, what is hypnosis? Hypnosis is an altered state of awareness in which the unconscious mind is open to suggestion with a diminished normal critical capability, that technical definition. But we're all of us going in and out of trance states all the time. They can be triggered by other people, they can be triggered by ourselves. A person sitting in front of a consultant who's just been told that they have cancer, do they go into an altered state of awareness? They very definitely do. So when a person is in an altered state of awareness in the presence of a very strong emotion, they're very open to suggestion. And this is why this sort of mass hysteria thing is encouraged by these, in inverted commas, charismatic type leaders.
And this time you're going to go 100 times deeper. Okay, put the hands across and go 100 times deeper, much deeper than ever before.
The difficulty is that it doesn't actually teach people how to think positively. It tells them to think positively, but it doesn't give them any skills towards achieving positive thinking. And positive thinking, as it's ordinarily understood, isn't so much about literally seeing the optimistic side to everything, but it's learning how to solve problems, how to find solutions. And this intervention does nothing of that sort.
And go inside now, go inside and see this incredible treasure.
The only damage that I believe that can be done through, what we've been talking about here is that a person begins to not believe that they can fail. And a person who believes that they cannot fail is at risk. If you take someone like a boxer and convince him that he's invulnerable, if he's capable and competent, that's good. If you have someone who is a second-rate boxer but can somehow convince him that he's invulnerable, then he's probably going to get seriously hurt. There is a pullback mechanism within all of us that is there to protect us. If a person begins to condition within themselves or be conditioned to leave out the possibility of failure, then yes, they're seriously at risk.
You are going to mine all of this.
I've had the experience of meeting a couple of people who have been on these overseas seminars, and like like any researcher, like any therapist, first question is, what did you learn? What did you find out? Because I'm encountering a wave of enthusiasm as to how wonderful this has been and what a difference it's made in their lives. And so I asked the question, what did you get? And the type of responses, well, it was wonderful, it was great, it was fantastic, and my life has totally changed. But as a good therapist, I ask the question, well, what specifically did you learn? Because, I mean, we all want a better life. And you get responses like, well, it was fantastic, you got to meet, you got to go yourself. But I found it very, very difficult to get at any substance.
Look at all those gold bars. Aren't they beautiful?
I think in the group setting as well, people are more likely to take on board what is being said because it's being reinforced by everybody else in the group. Of course, the difficulty is then afterwards when people leave and return to their own homes, their own communities, they don't have the sense of group belonging and the sense of purpose, and people might well feel a great sense of emptiness and letdown.
The core tenet of the Educo system is the concept of unconscious attention.
Well, the unconscious attention idea is the one that Tony, in part, was given his MSc for. It's an original idea that he's come up with, and it's the core of the Educo process. Now, in attention, you have lack of attention or wandering attention, which is where many people find themselves. Then you've got forced attention, and that's where you're making an effort in your life to do whatever it is. Unconscious attention is a different scale or a different level, where you use your whole mind, and it's sometimes said you're only using, well, 1, 2, 3% of your mind. Here it becomes possible to use your whole mind and enter into a wider state of awareness.
Professor Ian Robertson is head of the psychology department in Trinity College, Dublin.
The definition of attention is that it's your focused, conscious attending of whatever it is you're talking about or thinking about. So I don't think unconscious attention would be particularly recognised by brain or cognitive scientists as a concept that they would be familiar with.
Would you be familiar with the concept that we only use a tiny percentage of our brain power?
This is a very common modern myth that there's vast amounts of our brain lying unused. That's not actually true. We use all of our brains most of the time. That's not to say that our brains cannot be shaped by learning and experience. They indeed are, and most of us have some potential to improve our mental functioning a bit. But the idea that there's only 10% of it used is just a myth that has been around for about 50 years.
Tony Quinn seminars are not publicly advertised. Instead, potential clients are told about the courses through their other contact with Quinn's organisation, be it his gyms, shops or local courses. It's through these outlets that many prospective clients have initial contact with the Quinn organisation. Now, after the break, we hear more about the Quinn organisation, as well as more personal testimonies.
Margaret Ann Mulder. She's so beautiful. Would you like to go visit you?
Welcome back. Tony Quinn health products and shops are found all over the country. But what of the man himself? He doesn't reside in Ireland, but he does have a home in Malahide. He has residences in the Bahamas and Malibu, as well as various other exotic locations. His business interests are registered offshore in Jersey, and he's rarely seen in public. In the next part of the programme, we discover more about the man himself, as well as analysing some of the other elements which contribute to his burgeoning business empire. This couple also bought into the Quinn experience. She saw ads for Quinn's Irish-based seminars and felt the content could help her with some of her serious phobias. She has a serious fear of flying, but another fear weighs even heavier on her mind and has led to mental stress in the past.
I had a lot of fears around hospitals. I had a couple of operations back in '95, and I really had a fear of hospitals, and fear of being locked up was my biggest fear. And I thought Tony Quinn was going to give me the key. I was told he would give me the key, and not the answers, but just the key to life and how to live it. And I believed that. I believed, that he had something to offer me. I was told that Tony Quinn would be my saviour. But Tony Quinn, to me, I didn't look at him that way. I had only one saviour.
So you came up with the money, you decided to go. Day of departure, what happened?
Day of departure, I was at the airport, and just approaching the check-in, I had a panic attack. And one of Tony Quinn's people told me just to stay there, to calm down. And when she wasn't looking, I ran out of the airport because I was deliberately missing the flight. But then I rang to say, right, it's gone, and so is the 15,000. And said to me, look, don't worry about it. Just, you know, I'll link up with you and take you home from the airport. But he found me, as did four others of the Tony Quinn, belonging people who work for Tony Quinn, and they were persuading me, you know, that it was okay, that I'd be safe, everything was safe. And in the end, they said to me, because they stayed around me all the time, 5 of them did, and one of them told me to tell the fear to go off.
Eventually, she was convinced to take the flight and found herself in Egypt. However, after only one day of the course, she felt she'd made a mistake and immediately found herself alienated from the group. Why do you think that they would want to isolate you? Why do they think that maybe they saw you as a troublemaker?
Because I wasn't going along with, I'd said to Tony he was boring. So because I wasn't going along, and I did find him boring, it's just that I wasn't going along with their seminar, I wasn't fitting into the way they thought it should go. Because in my mind, I was overwhelmed by the fear of flying back.
Her mental condition began to deteriorate due to her anxiety over the return flight and her feeling of isolation from home.
We didn't know where in Egypt she was other than in Cairo. We had no phone, no phone numbers to contact her. So I couldn't contact her. She couldn't contact me. And I tried then to contact the people who ran it from here, from Ireland. And I got one unmerciful runaround between the people in Eccles Street, a woman called. They were assuring me that she was fine, but they couldn't tell me any more than that, and they couldn't answer why I couldn't contact her. I just got the runaround. That was from Thursday right through till Saturday when I got a call from this woman. I think it was a Saturday, the following Saturday, to say she was on her way out too, and she was going to bring her home.
Came over. She'd never explained to me she was there to fly me back home, to be with me. So at the airport I got very panicky again. I had a huge panic attack, but it's not my first panic attack. So before I knew what was going on, there was this white van with a person inside that I later learned it was a doctor. They were taking me to a home, to a mental home. And I didn't know this until I got there. So what they did to me was they locked me up for 3.5 days in a mental home. My biggest fear realised, and I was terrified.
Eventually, arrangements were made to return to Dublin before the rest of the group.
My worst fears were confirmed by that Dublin airport when this flight came in, and I was literally handed. I couldn't believe. I was totally shocked at the state of her. She looked like she'd lost a lot of weight, was very gaunt, was very disorientated, and was very, very sedated. And I was just, I was in shock when I saw her. But this woman and this other woman who identified herself, I can't remember her name, but identified herself as Tony Quinn's business manager in Ireland, she put out her hand. I had never met her before, and gave me a very limp handshake and said, if there's anything we can do, don't hesitate to contact us. And they just disappeared.
While this woman does not blame the Quinn organisation for her mental state, she still remains incredulous as to how she was treated. 2020 asked Martin Ford for an explanation of events. Now, that woman actually ended up in an institution in Cairo for 3.5 days. Her story is actually quite shocking. Why did that happen?
For the very simple reason that our vetting procedure was not complied with, and that was unfortunately not on our part, but on the person's part. Now, again, I don't want to get into an individual's case, right?
What do you mean the vetting procedure wasn't complied with?
Well, what I mean by that is that a person would have to declare a certain level of medical fitness. Now, I don't want to go into this anymore because it could be very embarrassing for the people concerned. The person has to declare a certain level of medical fitness in order to come, and we feel that that was not complied with.
Well, she claims she was encouraged and helped onto a plane in Dublin airport. She had a huge fear of flying and arrived over in Egypt and was very anxious about the flights home.
I feel now
had a panic attack.
Yeah, I feel that we're moving into the area of discussing an individual, and I feel that's not possible for me to do, unfortunately.
Quinn backs up his seminar techniques by continually citing research. He does the same with his numerous products sold over the counter nationwide. Paula Mee of the Irish Nutrition and Dietetic Institute examined two of the products, Life Extension Mix and Mind Alert, costing £35 and £20 respectively.
It's a question about claim, really. I mean, how do you measure life extension? It's very difficult to prove that you're extending somebody's life. So I think that you have to look at the components in the supplement. And something like this mix here contains over and above the recommended dietary allowance for vitamin C and some other vitamins. And therefore, it would require a licence. And it would be under the jurisdiction of the Irish Medicines Board.
They're not licensed because they are food supplements and they don't come under medicines licensing. It's an area that I personally have put a lot of study into.
2020 contacted the Irish Medicines Board, who under law are charged with the responsibility of licensing medicines. They confirmed that both the Life Extension Mix and Mind Alert pills are medicinal products. The IMB stated that before a medical product can be authorised for use, the manufacturer must apply for a product authorisation from the IMB. This application is assessed for the quality, safety and efficacy of the product. A medicinal product cannot be marketed without prior authorisation under the law. The IMB has also confirmed that the Tony Quinn organisation has no products licensed with themselves, yet they are being sold nationwide.
That would be actually very interesting to see as well, you know, the papers, the quality assurance and quality control behind something like this. It must be enormous, it must be very costly to carry out, and very difficult, because if you have some ingredients in pharmacological amounts like, for example, vitamin C, then that may have a synergistic effect with another ingredient in this tablet. And, you know, it would be very difficult to actually pinpoint how that tablet is going to affect a person and what type of cocktail you end up with. People have to be very careful about claims and, you know, what a name implies. Life extension, mind alert, all of those things are quite difficult to measure. And I think that people should look at supplements as supplements. They're not replacements for meals and snacks. So that, yes, you can use them, but if you do use them, make sure you tell your GP at your regular checkup.
The IMB has stated that an enforcement officer has recently been appointed to examine the area of unlicensed medicines. Another area of Quinn's enterprise that's been called into question is his postal request system. This system of applied positive thought again is advertised in his free sheet, Blueprint for Successful Living. For £25 a month or £40 for a family, Tony and his staff will concentrate on your goals. All you have to do is post them to Tony along with a cheque.
Postal requests are a demonstration of the Educo system. Now, just can I say that the Educo system means to draw out from within, as opposed to stuffing in information from the outside, which is normal education. The Educo system is based on the idea that you can learn to use your mind in a more productive manner. Now, with the postal requests, what you do is, if you have an issue that is in your mind, but you find it hard to maintain a very positive outcome in your own mind for it. And it could be a personal issue, a business issue for somebody else, or whatever it's going to be. What you may do with the postal requests is enlist the help of Tony and Aideen that does the work on that, and they will work along with you on the issue. You write out what the issue is, and you ask them to work, and they will work every day on that for you.
How do you mean they will work on it for you?
They will look at your request and hold a positive outcome for you. Now, this is deep into the area of mind technology, and there's very strong scientific evidence in certain areas for this.
It's almost like praying, you know, like filling out a mass card, or like your novena, like your petitions at knocking at holy shrines. It is building up expectations that cannot possibly be met. It's setting people up again for disappointment, and these are people that I'm sure will often have had many disappointments in their lives, and this will be an aspiration, a very much wished for goal, but it's bound to fail.
The idea of people paying to be prayed for, to me, is unconscionable. I don't remember Christ in the Sermon on the Mount talking about, please send money to my, to my church. Even when we're doing cancer research, I'm starting a program in a number of weeks' time with a group of cancer patients. We don't charge fees for it. It is done as a matter of research. You cannot set out to exploit vulnerable people. If you're going to pray for somebody, pray for them. But to charge for it, I'm not so sure.
Over the last decade, many new spiritual-based organisations have grown in popularity in Ireland. With society becoming increasingly secular, more and more people are looking for different ways to explore their spirituality, resulting in a rise in cult-like activity. Mike Gard works for Dialogue Ireland and has been monitoring the growth of new religious and spiritual movements for over 2 decades.
For most people in Ireland, when they think of Tony Quinn, they don't think about religion or about or something to do with a new religious movement. In fact, they're coming across him would be somewhat simple in the sense that it would be connected to some food or some nutrient or some product, some health product. But what's that got to do with religion? And if you ask Tony Quinn himself, he'd say, well, I've got nothing to do with religion. But when you look a bit deeper, you'll find, well, obviously, first of all, he uses the concept of yoga, which is, of course, a very deep, ancient tradition from the East. And he has his own particular interpretation of that, though the main focus in the last few years has been away from his yoga and more into this kind of what I would call a JUCO program, this idea of what you really want in life. If you focus on it, you can achieve it, what I would call, the power of positive thinking. That's the kind of Tony Quinn that I think is attracting this new breed of Irish people, because that's the kind of dream that they want. They want the big car, they want the successful life. Obviously, that's how it looks, and that's why they go in that direction. My problem is that I believe that he's bringing people under undue influence, under mind control, and that not only is he getting into people's heads, he's getting into their pockets, and I believe that he's doing very big damage to families all over the country, because I've been contacted by at least 10 families over the last year.
A source provided 2020 with a document written by Tony Quinn in 1994. In it, Quinn clearly outlined some of his future goals and ambitions that now seem to ring ominously in the ears of some. In the document, he writes,
I think that in some way I am meant to work with a large group of people. It could be millions. You might say, am I trying to start a cult? Am I trying to be a leader of something? I don't know.
Later, he continues,
what I tell people is, just line yourself up to me. Let's not make this into a personality thing. Just line yourself up to me.
He also hints at what has become the holistic nature of his business, where one aspect leads to another, be it his supplements, his diets, or his seminars.
Say you came to my gym and you thought I was the greatest instructor in the world. Well, then you would have to accept my exercise program and my diet. If you just came in and did your own exercises, what would be the point of being there?
Tony Quinn's blueprint for successful living is now a well-established business enterprise with apparently many satisfied customers. But there are other customers for whom the financial and psychological stakes were just too high.
When the Tony Quinn organisation has you in their seminars and on their courses, they seem to exert a lot of influence over those people and extreme loyalty. And my wife's personality has changed totally, and her loyalty to Tony is unshakable and is above everything else in her life. Her family, her husband, everything.
If a friend approached me and said, I'm considering going on one of these Tony Quinn seminars, I would have to go inside and say, do I know of anybody who has genuinely really found an improvement or an enhancement in their lives from their encounter with Tony Quinn, and I can't think of any. And have I met people who appear not to have particularly benefited? And those I have met quite a number. So basically I would say to that person, don't go.
2020 requested an interview with Tony Quinn, but we were told he was unavailable. And you can read more on the subject of Tony Quinn in this week's edition of the Sunday Tribune. After the break, real-life footage of how
the spiritual is soaring.